All right, this is quiz 4 in Khan Academy Quadratics, and we're going to try to solve this problem. And it looks to me like we might end up needing the quadratic formula. Now, if you really know what you're doing, you could also get this very same answer using completing the square, but let's take a look and let's see what's more practical. First, I got to rearrange this so that we can get 0 on one side of the equation. I prefer to have a positive number in front of the x squared, but it is going to be easier just to move the 3x here, so we're going to try this. I'm going to rearrange this so that we get 6 minus 6x squared equals 3x. Let's go ahead and first I'm going to make it into negative 6x squared plus 6. I'm going to just switch those two around. And then I'm going to subtract 3x from both sides. And when I do, I get negative 6x squared minus 3x plus 6 equals 0. Okay, that was after subtracting 3x from here and 3x from over here. You'll notice that when I try to do negative 6x squared minus 3x, I cannot do anything. I can't combine those. So I have to just leave it as negative 6x squared minus 3x plus 6. Now, I'm going to show you guys a little trick. In this particular problem, I can see that there is a GCF, a greatest common factor, and I'd like to get it out of there so I can make this math easier. So I'm going to go ahead and divide everything through by some number. You think for a minute what that might be. Okay, I hope that you agree that the number is, let's go ahead, yeah, I think it's going to be 3. And actually I could do a negative 3, and that way I get rid of that negative sign in front of here, maybe. Or maybe I'll just do 3. Let's make life easy. Divide by 3, divide by 3. Now, it's only legal to divide the left-hand side by 3 if I divide the right-hand side of the equal sign by 3 as well. In this case, 0 divided by 3 is just 0, but still it's good form. Okay, and again, something else I want to point out is that if I divide a bunch of things added and subtracted by one number, I can break them up into separate things. Those are perfectly legitimate. That's a perfectly legitimate thing to do. Okay, now let's go ahead and get the next result. The next result is going to be, this will be negative 2x squared. I recommend using the calculator when you do negative 6 divided by 3, just to double check and make sure you're doing the math right. Negative 3 divided by 3, that should be negative 1 or negative x, negative 1x I should say. And then plus 6 divided by 3 is 2 equals 0. Now if I have to do quadratic formula, it's going to be a lot easier. I could do completing the square, but completing the square is going to be a lot harder because I have this number here in front of the x squared. Normally, if I'm going to do completing the square, I want to have no number in front of the x squared. And so in this case, I'm going to say definitely this is a job for a quadratic formula. Okay, so if that's the case, let's write out our a's, b's, and c's. Our a equals negative 2, our b equals negative 1, and our c equals 2. Now, I recommend that you pause the video and you try to work ahead of me and see if you can do it on your own, but if you want to just watch me, that's fine too. So let's go ahead and plug in the numbers. Don't forget, quadratic formula looks like this. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over, whoa, that was bad. Let's try it. Let's get that. Let's do that nicer. All over 2a. Now I notice when I see students write this out, a lot of students just underline the b squared minus 4ac. Don't do that. It's everything. All of this stuff on top is being divided by 2a. And in fact, if I had it all as numbers and I wanted to punch it all in the calculator, I would definitely put parentheses around the 2a to make sure that the calculator divides correctly. Okay, and who knows, maybe even parentheses around this top part to make sure all of that gets divided by all of this. Anyways, those are my tips, my suggestions for you. Okay, let's go ahead and plug in these numbers. So we'll say x equals negative b, and it's already negative 1, so that'll be positive 1, plus or minus the square root of b squared. Well, that's going to be negative 1 squared. Now I see a lot of students that write this, negative 1 squared. Don't be lazy, don't write that, and certainly don't put that in your calculator. That is not what we're supposed to do here. Okay, well, let's take a look and see what we are supposed to do. What we're supposed to do is say b squared is something in parentheses squared, and in this case it's negative 1. Okay, now if you enter parentheses negative 1 parentheses squared in your calculator, you will get the correct result, positive 1. If you enter negative 1 squared into your calculator, it will give you a negative 1, and that is not the desired result here. Okay, so again, just some tips to try to keep you out of trouble. Then we'll do minus 4 times a, which is negative 2, times c, which is 2. And so here, then we'll go ahead and say all over 2 times a, which is negative 2. All right, let's go ahead and crunch these numbers. So we get x equals, and by the way, the answer is already looking an awful lot like b, isn't it? But let's just double check. Let's make sure. Let's see, b even has a negative 4 down below. So 1 here, negative 4 there. I'm hopeful this stuff comes out to be 17. Let's just do the math. So negative 1 squared, that's 1. Positive 1. Negative 1 times negative 1, positive 1. Negative 4 times negative 2 is positive 8. So this will be positive 1 plus 4 times 2 is 8, times 2 is 16. It's 1 plus 16. So this will be 1 plus or minus square root of 17 all over negative 4. Bada boom, bada bing. We are done. Not too bad. Good job, people.